Evan Park's last shift at the Maple and Ninth Diner was supposed to be quiet. Coffee refills, the hiss of the flat top, the usual overnight crowd of truckers and insomniacs. At 1:12 a.m., though, the bell over the door chimed and no one stood there. The door simply eased shut and the air got colder. "Draft," said Lila Moreno from behind the pie case, though she was rubbing her arms like it wasn't just a draft. The fluorescent lights along the windows flickered. Mr. Dalrymple, the manager, shouted from the office, "Quit wasting power with the heat," as if that explained everything. 2 booths were occupied. A grad student asleep over a laptop and a man in a brown coat staring at a laminated menu. He hadn't turned in for 10 minutes. Evan grabbed a coffee pot and made the rounds. When he reached the brown coat, the man lifted his head. His eyes were clouded like ice on a windshield. "You folks still serving?" the man asked. "Full menu until 2, Evan said. "What can I get you?" The man smiled, and Evan felt a slick slide in his gut. "I'll have the last order," the man said. "We don't," Evan started, but the words broke off. On the ticket wheel above the pass, a fresh slip was already clipped there. "Last order," it read, in a looping hand Evan didn't recognize. Lila caught his look and shook her head. She hadn't rung it. Mr. Dalrymple's office door was shut. "What's in the last order?" Evan asked, playing along. The man's smile didn't change. "You'll know when you hear it ring." Evan took the empty ticket to the pass. The grill hissed and the toaster kicked on by itself. The radio that never worked crackled into static and then a thin tune. Something like an old jingle, tiny bells tinkling as if from underwater. On the corner of the line, a warming dome he'd never seen here before fogged over with steam. "Do you smell that?" Lila whispered. It wasn't bacon. It was rain on hot asphalt. It was wet wool and pennies. Evan lifted the dome. Inside was a plate he didn't remember plating. 1 over-easy egg, a triangle of toast, and a circle of something that looked like sausage but pulsed faintly, as if it were breathing. The yolk quivered. The egg winked. "Nope," Lila said, stepping back. "Nope, nope." The bell over the door chimed again. The grad student looked up, blinking. No one entered. But the booths had shifted. The brown coat man was no longer in his seat. He was at the counter, dead center. "Coffee's getting cold," he said. Evan carried the plate. His hands shook enough that the yolk rippled like a tiny tide. He set the last order down. The man leaned in and inhaled deeply, almost reverently. "What is this?" Evan asked. "A sending off," the man said. "Endings need rituals. Didn't your boss tell you? Places like this don't just close. They get unstitched." "We're open," Evan said stupidly. "Until 2. Not the clock," the man said. The map. Mr. Dalrymple's office door opened. He stepped out, tying his tie like he was late for church. His eyes were red. "I told you to stop with the theatrics," he said to no one in particular. Then he saw the plate and went ashy. "Who rang that?" Evan didn't answer. The radio jingle sharpened into words, old-timey harmony layered with static. "If you can't find home tonight, take the road by neon light." The man in the brown coat cut into the sausage. The diner shook. The windows showed the lot outside, but the lot had slid sideways. The gas station now squatted where the Chinese takeout should be. A semi rumbled past with no engine sound, just the scream of wind in a bottle. Lila clutched Evan's sleeve. "Do you feel that?" "Like an elevator." The man chewed and swallowed. "Second course," he said pleasantly. On the pass, another dome fogged over. Under it waited a slice of pie. Cherry, except the filling was too dark and the crust had no seams. Evan's hands moved before his brain. He brought it, set it down, and saw that the pie wasn't cut cleanly. It had impressions of teeth in it already, small crescent rows like something had nibbled from within. "Stop serving him," Mr. Dalrymple said, but his voice had the strength of a dying battery. The neon open sign sputtered. OPE, the N went dark. The booth stretched deeper like the room had grown a spine. Somewhere far down the line of vinyl and formica, dishes clinked and laughter rose. The sound of old customers Evan had never met. A reflection on the stainless napkin holder showed Evan, Lila, and the man, but behind them it also revealed a crowd representing decades of nights. A kid in a varsity jacket, a woman in a beehive hairdo, and a line cook with a cigarette tucked above one ear. "You're feeding it memories," Lila whispered, eyes wet. "You're feeding it to us," The brown coat man dabbed his mouth with a napkin. "Final course," he said. "For the road." The bell over the door chimed, and this time someone did come in. Evan's mother, 10 years younger, shaking rain from her coat. She didn't look at him. She slid into a booth and smiled at a man who wasn't Evan's father. Evan stumbled. "Mom?" The brown coat man tapped the counter. "He'll need the check." Evan's vision tunneled. On the pass, another dome waited. He lifted it and found a folded receipt, printed with every order he'd ever rung in. Grilled cheese at 16, pancakes after prom, and the turkey club he'd split with Lila on a snowy night. At the bottom was a total due in a number format he couldn't read. "He brought it anyway. Who pays?" Evan asked, voice cracked. "You do," the man said gently, "or you stay." Evan looked at Lila. Her lips trembled. Mr. Dalrymple was staring at the wall where the framed health inspection had always hung. The frame now held a photograph of the diner empty at dawn, chairs on tables, light like angels. "How?" Evan asked. The man in the brown coat smiled like a father watching his kid ride without training wheels. He turned the receipt over. Scrawled there in ink were 4 words. "Last shift, last goodbye." Evan reached under the counter and pulled the key ring from the hook. He knew which one it would be without looking. A brass skeleton key none of them had ever used. He laid it on the receipt and the paper sucked it down with a soft, wet sound. The radio jingle faded. The neon open went fully dark. The window showed the real lot again. Empty, slick with drizzle. The booth shrank back to their proper length. The air warmed. The man in the brown coat stood, leaving a tip in coins that were too heavy and too cold. "Thanks for the service," he said, almost kindly. He pushed open the door. The bell chimed. The street outside smelled like wet leaves and grease. Evan blinked hard. The grad student snored. Mr. Dalrymple rubbed his eyes. Lila squeezed Evan's fingers. "What did we just—" she began. Evan shook his head. He picked up the receipt, but it was blank. He folded it, slid it into his apron, and said, "Order up," though no one had ordered anything at all. When the clock hit 2, he flipped the sign to closed for the last time and felt the key, heavy now, in his apron's pocket. Kendra Holt's Toyota coughed its last breath right at mile marker 142, where the desert looks like the ocean froze and cracked. The night air tasted like copper. Her phone showed one lonely bar and then none. Far down the highway, the neon of a lonely truck stop buzzed against the stars. She started walking. The place had no name she could see, just a flickering sign that might once have said, "Eat." Inside, a single ceiling fan turned so slowly it may as well have been a clock. A tired man with a turquoise bolo tie and a name tag reading Dwayne looked up from a crossword. "Help you?" "My car died," Kendra said. "Can I use your phone to call a tow?" Dwayne slid a rotary phone across the counter like a relic. "The line goes dead sometimes after midnight," he said. "But you can try." Kendra dialed. The line rang twice and then filled with a hollow whispering as if she had put her ear to a seashell. She hung up. "You got coffee?" "Always." He poured it into a chipped mug. While she wrapped her hands around the heat, the door creaked. A man walked in wearing a baseball cap the color of a scrub brush. Blue Cap, her brain nicknamed him. He did not look at either of them. He drifted to the back aisle and stood there, staring at a rack of jerky like it held the answers to math. "He comes in every night," Dwayne murmured. "Never buys. Never leaves with nothing, though." "What's that mean?" "You'll see." A moth bigger than Kendra's palm battered itself against the fluorescent light. The fan ticked. Blue Cap hummed tunelessly and took one jerky stick, held it up to his nose, then put it back. He repeated the process with precise meditative care. When Kendra turned her attention back to the counter, she saw that Dwayne was writing something on a scrap of paper. He slid it toward her. In a narrow, tidy hand he had written, "Do not look out the windows when the wind stops." "What?" she began. The fan slowed. The moth went still in the tube. The wind, which had been whining softly through the doorframe, cut off like a radio switched to mute. "Get down." Dwayne said conversationally, as if suggesting she try the biscuits. Now they crouched behind the counter. Kendra's heart skittered. A shape crossed the door's rectangular window, blotting out the neon with a moving patch of darker dark. The handle rattled, then stopped. Something huge leaned against the glass with a long, gummy squeal. Blue Cap did not crouch. He stood in the aisle, head tilted, as if listening for the right lyric to a song he couldn't remember. "You always come when it's quiet," he whispered. "Always hungry, huh?" Kendra smelled rain. Not rain exactly. Wet dust, the petrichor scent of a storm that would never arrive. Nails clicked softly on the tile. Too many nails, too far apart. The thing outside tried the back door. A hinge shrieked. Dwayne reached under the register and came up with a lantern, the kind you pump and light. He didn't light it. He hugged it like a talisman. "Why not the lights?" Kendra breathed. "Lights tell it we're awake," he said. "And awake folks got choices." The clicking stopped. The silence stretched, taut as wire. Kendra found herself breathing shallowly, trying not to move the air. Somewhere behind them, the soda cooler let out a small, despairing hum. Blue Cap took one jerky stick and bit the end. He chewed and, God help her, spat it on the floor neat as a bird. Spit again. He put the rest of the stick on the tile like an offering. Dwayne closed his eyes. "Toll paid," he whispered. The handle jiggled once more, then released. The wind returned in a sigh that felt like a hand lifting from the back of her neck. The fan resumed its pointless rotation. The moth bumped the light again. Dwayne stood. "See? Always leaves with something." "What in the hell was that?" Kendra asked, voice shaking. "Road takes things," Dwayne said. "Always has. Asphalt's a river, and rivers want payment. Sometimes it's time, sometimes it's luck. Sometimes it's a pound of flesh." He glanced at Blue Cap. "Sometimes it's smaller." Blue Cap adjusted his hat, eyes glassy, and left without a word. Kendra's laugh came out wrong. Okay, I need a tow." Dwayne dialed for her. This time a sleepy voice answered on the second ring. "Barker's Towing." He gave the mile marker and directions. 15 minutes, he said, hanging up. He looked at Kendra. "You got anything it can take that won't ruin you?" "My car already gave up," she said. "Is that enough?" He smiled sadly. "Maybe, but it likes to double dip." She set a 20 on the counter for the coffee. "Keep the change. Won't want money," he said. "You'll know when it asks." Barker's truck pulled up with a blaze of headlights. The driver was a woman with sleeves of ink and a yawn like a lion. Kendra climbed in. As they approached mile marker 142, the Toyota sat neatly on the shoulder, hazard lights glowing like a slow heartbeat. The desert spread flat and pale. Barker hooked up the car. "Keys?" she asked. "In the cup holder," Kendra said, then stopped. The driver's door was open. The keys were on the seat, but lying across the cup holder was a single strip of jerky, bitten on one end. "What's that?" Barker asked. "Nothing," Kendra lied. Her mouth was dry. On the ride back, they passed the truck stop. The neon had given up entirely. In the dark glass, she saw her face and something big moving behind her reflection. A shadow the size of the whole desert. Pacing. Patient. At Barker's yard, the invoice printed with a cheerful beep. "Sign here," Barker said. Kendra took the pen. The total was reasonable, but below it, another line item had appeared in faint gray. Toll. Beside it, no number, just a space. "What do I put?" Kendra asked. Barker raised an eyebrow. "Never seen that. Folks say weird stuff happens out past 140, but I don't charge tolls." Kendra stared at the blank. Her hand moved. She wrote, "One good memory I won't miss," before she could stop herself. The printer chittered. The line cleared. Driving home in a loner, she tried to replay her best days. First apartment, first promotion, a slow kiss on a lake dock. All were there. But the early morning Saturday when her dad taught her to drive in an empty lot, his hand warm on the wheel, their laughter when she stalled, that one she couldn't reach. Like a word on the tip of her tongue. At a red light, she put her forehead on the steering wheel and cried quietly for something she couldn't name, while out on the shoulder near mile marker 142, a moth the size of a hand beat itself against a dead neon tube, and the wind never stopped again. Nora Bell needed rent. The Carters needed a sitter. Easy math. Their house on Aldershore Lane perched above the lake like a perfect eyebrow. Elise Carter met Nora at the door in tasteful linen, giving a tour with a voice as neat as a folded napkin. Martin's at a late meeting. June's asleep upstairs. Help yourself to anything that isn't locked. What's locked? Nora asked, smiling. Elise's smile didn't move her eyes. You'll know it when you see it. The nursery camera monitor sat like an altar on the kitchen island. The screen showed a grayscale crib, a pale ceiling fan, and a wall with faint polka dots. The baby, June, was a soft burrito of blankets breathing like a moth. Nora made tea. Rain spidered down the glass. At 9:17, the monitor crackled. Nora glanced over. The fan had stopped. The polka dots on the wall had shifted like the pattern had exhaled. She leaned closer. The dots were not dots. They were circles of old tape, ghost halos where something had once hung. Maybe picture frames, maybe something heavier. Nora turned up the volume, white noise. The kind you can't tell from blood in your ears. At 9:23, a light under the nursery door went on. Nora's first thought, nightlight. Second, Elise mentioned no nightlights. Third, the light was moving. June? Nora said absurdly to the monitor. The baby slept on. The light swam up the door frame like a fish. Nora turned off the kitchen light so the monitor's glow would show clearer. The moving light resolved into a flare like a phone screen's flashlight, but too steady, too clean. Martin? Nora called up the stairs, no answer. Rain clicked. She took the stairs 2 at a time, the way you do when you are young and reasonably sure ghosts are just malicious wiring. The top hallway was a museum of closed doors. The nursery was ajar. The light that had crawled under it was gone. Inside, the fan turned gently. The polka dots were polka dots. June snored her tiny, snuffling snore. Nora looked stupidly in the closet. Nora's eyes fell on the hamper. Behind the rocking chair. Hello? She whispered to dust. The monitor on the island downstairs chimed. Nora jumped. She could hear it from the nursery, a soft digital bing like a polite finger on glass. She jogged down. The monitor had split-screened itself. On the left, the nursery. On the right, a grayscale view of the kitchen from the island pointed at the back door. Nora's own shadow wavered on the floor. She put a hand over the camera lens. The right frame obligingly went black. She lifted her hand. The kitchen returned. Okay, she said aloud, telling the empty house she was not spooked. Cool feature. At 9:41, the baby giggled in her sleep. Nora smiled despite herself. The house crackled as warm air moved through cold wood. Thunder trumped low over the lake. At 9:48, the monitor chimed again. A third frame had appeared, the driveway as seen from above. The view bobbed slightly as if the camera were breathing. Headlights flicked past on the road. Then the driveway filled with light, someone turning in. Nora glanced at the time. 49. Elise said Martin's meeting might go late. She went to the door and checked the peephole. Rain blurred the world in watercolor. A car idled. She gently cracked open the door. Hello? She called. Mr. Carter? A man stood at the edge of the porch light, umbrella low. Nora, he said, relief in his tone. He stepped forward into the light. He was handsome in a way that suggested he was well-organized and detail-oriented. Martin Carter, he said. Thank you for coming. Elise told me you're a lifesaver. She let him in. He closed the umbrella and shook cold rain from it, careful not to drip on the rug. He smelled like winter and a fantastic hotel. How's June? He asked, already walking toward the kitchen and sliding his coat off. Asleep, Nora said. The monitor's great, shows the nursery and... Her voice trailed off. The monitor, obedient, had split again. 4 frames now, nursery, kitchen, driveway, and a 4th, darker, grainier. A stairwell. The angle was wrong. It felt like the camera had been set on a stair, looking up into the main hall. Nora glanced at the real stairs. Empty. She looked back at Martin. He was watching the monitor, too. Expression neutral. We like to be thorough, he said. Sure, Nora said, forcing a laugh. She lifted her tea. I'll get out of here, so June wailed, a sudden knife-sharp cry. Both of them jumped. I'll go, Nora said automatically. Martin didn't move. Please, he said. He was listening. Not to the baby, Nora realized, but to the house. To the rain. To the exact timbre of the monitor's static. His head cocked like a wolf's. Nora climbed. The nursery door now stood wide. June's mouth was a perfect O, face red with rage. Nora lifted her. The baby went heavy and hot and then wrongly cold. In the far corner, the wall had a faint rectangle where a frame had hung until recently. The paint beneath was brighter. A nail jutted like a tooth. On the way back down, baby against her shoulder, Nora glanced at the fourth frame on the monitor. The stairwell showed a shadow descending 2 steps behind her. Her stomach turned to ice. She whirled. No one. Just the polite air of a rich house. In the living room, Martin was standing by the mantel looking at nothing. Nora cleared her throat. "I think something's wrong with your cameras," she said. "They're showing angles I don't see." Martin turned. He was holding a small matte black device in his palm. It looked like a car fob or the world's most serious USB drive. "We had a break-in," he said. "After that, we upgraded." June hiccuped in Nora's arms, then settled, warmth returning like a tide. Nora glanced at the mantel. The frames there held photos of the Carters at a lake, the Carters at a summit, and the Carters on a bench with a dog. None held a baby. "When were these taken?" Nora asked before she could stop herself. Martin smiled a shape that wasn't kindness. "Before," he said. The monitor chimed a 5th time. The screen was quartered, and then something tried to make it fifths. The edges bowed. In the new wedge, the image was too close, texture close, like fabric at nose distance. Cloth with tiny polka dots. Nora's arms tightened around June. The baby stirred. "Elise said," she began. She didn't know what Elise had said. Elise had said, "You'll know it when you see it." Martin set the matte device on the island, cautiously, like he was setting down a loaded thought. "Do you want the truth, Nora?" he asked softly. "They took her. The ones who watch from the corners. We made a deal to get her back. We stream us to them all night, every night. We let them watch. We let them take the angles they like. And in return, June breathes." He nodded at the baby. "Sometimes she forgets to. They remind her." Nora swallowed against a throat like salt. "You're messing with me." "You'll know it when you see it," Martin said, and the house agreed, every camera chiming at once. The 5th frame pushed wider. The fabric it showed shivered like skin. Tiny holes opened where polka dots had been, like pores. Something pressed from the other side, testing the weave. A fingertip, an eye? The baby, asleep again, smiled. A slow, borrowed smile Nora did not recognize. "Put her down," Martin said, not unkindly. His eyes were bright with something like prayer. "She has to be on camera." Nora's muscles argued with everything decent in her. She put June in the crib. The baby exhaled and was still. The monitor's 5th frame smoothed. The pores closed. "The polka dots became polka dots. You can go," Martin said, already turning back to the mantel and listening to the house. "We'll pay double." Nora fled into rain so heavy it erased her footprints. When she reached her apartment, she checked her phone with shaking hands. A new app had installed itself, unnamed. When she tapped it, her screen turned to static, then to the view of her own living room from somewhere near the ceiling. In the corner, a small figure sat cross-legged on her rug, watching the screen in her hands, watching her watch, patient as a storm. Jamal Ortiz took the mall security job because it came with health insurance and a lot of walking. Ridgewood Commons wasn't big, but it had corners. Dead ones where the music didn't reach and the tile still remembered the 80s. His least favorite corner was the section near Eidolon Formal Wear, which was a store selling mannequins but did not openly acknowledge that fact. "Tailored to you," the sign promised. "Over suits that cost more than rent." At 9:05 p.m., after the last shoe store's gate rattled down, Jamal took his final loop. Eidolon's window was a silver forest, mirrors, chrome racks, and headless forms in charcoal wool. He'd gotten used to the way they seemed to lean when he passed. He'd never gotten used to the way one of them, a female form in a pearl sheath, still had a head. "Hi, Pearl," he said under his breath. Because naming things makes them smaller. He tapped his baton lightly on the gate. Sleep tight. The lights inside dimmed to showroom twilight. Jamal moved on. 10 minutes later, he saw movement in Eidolon's glass. Not the shift of his reflection, but a slow turn, like a dancer thinking about it. He stopped. The headless ones stood straight. Pearl's chin had lowered just slightly toward her shoulder. "Mechanical display," Jamal muttered. "Timers." He logged the note in his phone and kept walking. At 9:27, the cleaning crew's buffer hummed, smoothing the floors into an ice rink. Jamal took his break by the pretzel kiosk, ate one warm pretzel bite because he was trying to be good, and checked the doors at the east entrance. Outside, the parking lot lamps turned the world into shallow bowls of light. Moths did their small doomed orbits. When he came back with Eidolon at 9:43, Pearl was facing the glass. Not dramatically, just enough that her cheek caught the mall light. Her eyes were painted, not real, but the gloss on them was high, and it made the tiny reflections look like tears. "Okay," Jamal said. He tried the gate. Locked, solid. He cupped his hands against the glass. Inside, nothing moved. He told himself that if he reviewed the overnight camera footage later, he'd see a harried employee doing last-minute windows, not ghost mannequins practicing micro-expressions. Copy. 2, came Donna's voice on the radio. "Are you all wonderful on the west side?" "Yeah," Jamal said. "Just a weird display." "None weirder than last week's escape room pop-up," Donna said. "This place creeps me out." At 10:01, the mall went to sleep. The music cut. The ads on the big mural screens froze into soft frozen smiles. The gate motors finished their evening cough. Jamal clicked off each vestibule light in turn. The click-thunk was a lullaby he trusted. He saved Eidolon for last. Pearl wasn't in the window. The other forms stood exactly as they had. The mirrors held acres of empty suits. The pearl sheath hung on nothing. The spot where she had been was a blank piece of floor. Jamal's brain arranged the facts like a cautious bouquet. Someone had moved the mannequin. The gate was locked. There was no back door from that store to the hall. But behind every store there were service corridors, and behind those, old maps that didn't match the new walls. He radioed, keeping his voice flat. "Donna, I've got a possible break-in at Eidolon. The gate looks locked. Mannequins. Missing. On my way," she said. "You want me to call Ridgewood PD?" "Wait," Jamal said. "Could be a rematch." He knelt and peered under the gate. The showroom floor was clean enough to eat off. Further back, beyond the rows of suits, he noticed a doorway that he had never seen before. No light came from it. He checked the gate chain again. Solid. He looked up at Pearl's last position and flinched. She was standing on the other side of the gate. To the right, close enough to fog the glass if she had breath. Her head was tilted, eyes wide and glossy. He hadn't heard her move. He hadn't seen her. She had simply stepped closer to see him as customers do. "Okay," he told his body. "We are not running." He heard footsteps behind him. "Donna, what am I looking at?" She asked. "Display mannequin," Jamal said. His voice sounded like someone else's. "Moved." Donna leaned in. "I don't like that one," she said. "She's got opinions. Do you see a door back there?" Jamal asked. Donna squinted. "No, where?" Jamal looked again. The dark doorway had moved, closer now, an inch to the left, like a game of three-card Monte. The darkness in the room deepened. He took the master ring from his belt. The brass key for generic tenant roll-down slid home and turned with the reluctant sigh of old metal. The gate rattled up 2 feet, enough to belly crawl. Donna put a hand on his shoulder. "We don't get paid like this," she said. "Someone is inside," Jamal said, believing that voicing it made the situation feel external and solvable. He slid under. Eidolon smelled like cedar and dust and something sweet, like women's perfume left in a closed car in the summer. The suits whispered on their hangers. Pearl watched him past her shoulder, eyes catching every ambient light. Jamal kept his baton at his side. "Store's closed," he said into the air, projecting confidence. "Ridgewood PD en route." Silence. He stepped toward the back. The doorway waited. It wasn't a doorway exactly. It was a space where the wall refused to be a wall. On its threshold, he felt colder and taller, like a kid in a grown coat. He leaned and looked in. It was a room the size of a bed. No shelves. No alarms, no dust. On the far wall, a hook held a tag. "Ridgewood Commons, 1987, do not display." Below it, in careful script, "She follows attention." "Jamal?" Donna called. "I'm here," he said. He backed away. Pearl was behind him. Closer than she had any right to be, her painted mouth parted the tiniest fraction. In the glass of a nearby mirror, Jamal saw himself and saw Pearl, and saw, between them, someone else. A girl with short dark hair and a name tag that read Hollis. She wore Eidolon black. Her eyes were tired and full of a year that had eaten her alive. "Can you see that?" Jamal asked. "See what?" Donna said. Jamal looked back at the mirror. The girl pressed a finger to her lips. "Shh." Pearl's head turned, a whisper of plastic. The girl mouthed, "Don't look long." "Don't feed her." Jamal shut his eyes and counted to 5. When he opened them, Pearl was 3 feet farther away, as if he'd skipped frames. The mirror now reflected only Suit's gait, Jamal said. He stepped backward until his belt caught the metal lip. "Down!" Donna hit the chain. The gate rattled and slapped the tile. Pearl stood inches away on the other side, her hands, never sculpted with fingers, resting in a position that suggested she wanted to appear harmless. "Call PD," Jamal said softly. "And maintenance. We're bracing that gate." At 10:19, Ridgewood PD arrived to tell them there was no way a mannequin moved. At 10:22, maintenance drilled lag bolts into concrete. At 10:37, Donna made them both tea and paper cups from the pretzel stand. Jamal wrote his incident report slowly. Under description, he wrote, "A customer was lingering after closing time. Advised." He printed it, signed it, and slid it into the tray. As he finished, something tapped the window from inside Eidolon, a polite, patient tap. Jamal didn't look up. He focused on the paperwork, on the way ink dries, and on the hum of the soda machines down the hall. When his shift ended at midnight, he walked out into cold air that smelled like pond water and parking lot tar. In his car window, his reflection stared back, tired, 35, trying. Behind his shoulder in the passenger seat, a pale oval hung in the dark like a moon. He did not turn. He drove home using only the mirrors he could trust.